Yes, we can.
Yes.
Awesome. Did we all look at the reflection video for task E? Let's see by show of hands who looked at the reflection video and who did some work. Only 5 people out of the 43 that are in class. What should we do about this, guys? When you raise your hand, don't lower it. I just want to see how many people. So let's just see here. I just want to see if I am actually. Okay. The numbers are going up, which is a little bit better. All right, so we've got 22 people, still less than half the class. Wow. Guys, what's happening? What is happening with preparations? You had the whole week to look at the video. What did we talk about in the last session? Did you not get enough time? You can lower your hands, guys. What's happening? What's the excuse this time around? All right, no response. I hope you guys will respond better when you start working through the task. All right, so today I'm going to take you through task E. And unfortunately, I just have to revisit some of the slides in the reflection video because a significant amount of people, I see there's a hand up. It just says info. There's no name. Who's that? Who's info? Okay. All right. So because a lot of people did not look at the reflection video, I'm not going to go deep into them. That's the consequence of not looking at the reflection video, right? So I'm just going to highlight a few of the things that I was talking about in the reflection videos that will build up into information on the day. So let's get straight into it. You were given document E, right? The task was for you to respond to Ryan Fanikek's request by number 1, documenting any concerns you have regarding the envisaged procedures, right? So Ryan gave you some procedures that he drafted and you had to express your concerns, right? So you were reviewing his procedures. And number 2, describe any further key procedures that should be performed on the selected components, right? So from your knowledge of audit, what would you pull through into procedures? Because your due diligence, you were told, you'll see on the information the day when we dissect it that I want a level of assurance similar to the audit. So definitely you would then need to pull your auditing skills. And then you were told not to put generic lengthy lists of generic procedures. So generic procedures would not help you. It had to be information that hits the nail on its head regarding the 3 items: your revenue, your employee costs, and your OPEX. It's basically your bad debts. Right. So did you guys attempt to respond to this task? Did you attempt to respond to it for those that looked at the reflection video? No.
Yes, we did.
Okay, I didn't see who was speaking. Who said yes?
It is I.
Hi, Annalise. So what did you find with your response? Do you think that this task was triggered? Annalise.
Yes, it was triggered.
Do you think it was triggered very well, clearly?
I do feel like it was triggered clearly, but let's see what you're gonna say, because I'm not sure if what I've written on my paper is the right one.
Okay.
Because I sort of redid part E, and yeah, I'm just gonna hear from you if
Okay.
the things that you mentioned are on whatever I've written.
All right, cool. Cindy, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. So for me, I felt like I didn't see a strong trigger to that task. Like it wasn't what I expected. And also like when they come saying things like don't give generic procedures, like I feel like that's what gets me down in tasks, because I have things that I want to say, like even in past tasks, when I'm going through these videos, like unfortunately I haven't been able to attend live because of load shedding. But I'm like, yes, I thought of all of this, but then clearly there's a disconnect between what I know and how I am putting it into a response that the APC examiners can see that I do know the context. But in terms of things like generic, like I understand this generic like costing, but some things for me, I feel like it could be generic, like these are things we always do. So I'm not sure, is that what they mean by generic, or where, yeah, when they come with limiting things, I feel like maybe I limited too much.
All right, so generic has got quite a few dimensions, right? For example, number one, your general procedures, the thing that you normally do, your casting, your comparing to prior, all those things, right? Your GL, tying them, that's generic, right? But also, where you've got your revenue, let's say your revenue type is selling fuel, and then you've got another revenue type that is, let's say, buying and selling coffee, and then you've got another revenue, which is tuition. There are procedures that you can say, if I ask Kumu to audit revenue here, and he says something generic would apply to all three of these, right? But there are things that you would want to do when it's specific to tuition, specific to selling coffee, specific to fuel, because the procedures would really be different, because the types of documents you look at are different, the things you consider as different or are different, etc. Does that make sense to you, Cindy?
Yes, that makes sense.
So you can't just do a blanket approach. You have to be specific. Here you're given tuition, so you must be specific with that tuition. Of course, you've been told about the documents throughout, the things that you expect to see. You would have done research on the documents involved. What would be in the revenue cycle for this particular institution? So what can I actually drill down to as my specific procedures in verifying these tuition fees that they say they have? Katleko?
Hi, Kumu. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
From my side, I actually missed this trigger because I thought it was predominantly math. And maybe I'm biased because I enjoy math more than audit. So when I saw, what I want to ask you is, when they put the audit skill in inverted commas, for me, maybe that flew, right? But in the English context, when you use inverted commas, sometimes it's not like a direct thing. It's like a substitute, like, put your audit hat on, but not necessarily like saying it is auditing. So for me, when I saw the trigger, I thought, no, this is straight up math. We are acquiring. We're going to do valuations. We growing, because they were talking about growing the numbers of schools within this duration, etc. So when I come across something like that, where there's inverted commas on a word, is it sort of like a hint at a particular discipline or what?
Yeah, so take it from an angle. Let's say you and me are having a conversation and I'm telling you about something, and then I say in quotes, right? I might be highlighting something to you, right?
Mm.
Or I could be giving a disclaimer on something. But there is, what is clear is that those quotes give some sort of emphasis to something that you need to think about, right? But from what you mentioned to me, I pick up what I like to call selective reading. So you read selectively because you've got your favorite module, which is math. And all you were seeing when you're reading was math. Then you ignored the clear things like the clear word that says audit skills because you don't like audit. So selective reading is also very, very, very dangerous. But I'll show you why. I agree with you that there were a lot of things that we're talking about that could end up in a math task, right? But also a lot were in an audit task, and I'll show you why. That's why you see in my reflection video, I talk about a lot of math as well.
Yes.
If you've looked at it.
Yes,
And then
I
the
did.
audit is just a bit, but that's the nature of EPC, right? I can give you a whole lot of things on tax, on IFRS, and then I end up asking you about an ethics thing that has not even been triggered.
Correct. Correct.
So you shouldn't do selective reading. You must analyze each and everything that they tell you, right? That's the key. But you'll see. I'm just going to go through it a little bit in the other slides.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Katleko. And I guess, Katleko, that answers number 3. Did you prepare sufficiently for this task? Right. Anyone else with something to say on number 1 to number 3 there? Let's see. Is there anything in the chat? Cindy says, same, I was waiting for math. Right. So now that you look back on this task, right, and in reflection, do you think you wrote enough back then? Before you look at the information of the day, do you think back then you wrote enough?
On my side, I didn't. I think I got confused. There was just a lot. So in terms of preparation back then, I just didn't prepare very well.
Timakazo says it is difficult to say since I don't have my script. Yeah, no, I get it. It's just you thinking in reflection in your own mind, not necessarily checking what you actually did on your script. Okay, that's fine, guys. So let's move on. I want us to talk about the pre-released information a little bit, right? So again, like the last time, I've highlighted some things, I've put them in the slides. I thought it would be more efficient because auditing has got a lot of content. So if we try and type as we do, it can also result in a lot of time being spent. So let's see here. Do I have this one? Great. That's it. So we've got this document 3. It says, this was an email from the CFO to the FM, right? So Dennis, no, sorry, I've got the wrong slide on the, sorry guys, let me just confirm the slide here. All right, yeah, actually it is the correct slide, right? So I'm going to share my PowerPoint slide. Okay. So we are looking at pre-released information, right? So this is what you had in the reflection video. You had your document 3. You were told about the mid-tier private schools. You were told about the number of investment opportunities, right, in the sector to expand the reach. You were told about other schools acquiring a significant number of existing schools in the country. So already you're thinking about those mergers and acquisitions, right? Then we were told about Denise has been approached by the owners of the existing mid-tier private school. So why was that important? Because at the top there we were told mid-tier private schools, you were given examples. So you're supposed to go and do a lot of research on these guys. What are their key indicators? What is their key information? If I'm asked to compare this competitor to that competitor, what would happen, right? Then we were also told about the current number of the current enrollment, 438 contact learners with an average tuition fee of 38.5 or 30,000 rands, 30,500 rands per annum. Now, if you were to compare it with the other mid-tier private schools, what would it mean? Okay. Then we were also told about in conducting our assessment of the potential acquisition. So you know that this could be about a merger or an acquisition, right? So automatically, like Katleko, it is a math question, right? But let's read on. We may need the following. Number one, the financial and operational performance of the school. So you might be asked about financial analysis, comparisons. Does it make sense? Number two, how we might go about determining a fair acquisition price. Now you're thinking valuations, you're thinking math, right? And then number three, and look at that, it's so subtle. General due diligence matters, right? Now, due diligence, you'd know it from math. When you want to acquire, you're looking at the risks, the benefits, the advantages, the disadvantages, but also you might be asked about due diligence procedures, and that has an auditing flavor to it. Now, I may again want to draw on your audit skills, and this is the part we're talking about. Now, what does this mean? If you take a step back and sit and say, what does this statement say? This means that on the day, I must anticipate to be asked about audit-related information regarding this. Now, when you sit back, you might be thinking about auditing the valuation, auditing the calculations, auditing the school. I might be asked about the due diligence procedures because they mentioned due diligence in 3. A lot of things, but definitely audit can be asked, and something is going to come because they're saying, I may, right? I want to draw on your audit skills. And look at that. When we brief the professional services firm that we plan to to contract to undertake a due diligence on the key financial aspects. Now, definitely due diligence should be concerning you now. You can't go into the information on the day without knowing what due diligence is, what you need to do when it comes to due diligence. Then you were told that just thought that I would give you fair warning of this. Now, Katleko, what does this mean? Do you see the dangers of selective reading? Now, all this then fell away when you thought math. But look at that, fair warning of this. Does it make a difference, Katleko?
No, Kumu. No, it's not.
Okay. So
Okay, because the thing is, this one is complex, and I think maybe because it's personal on my end, at work we do due diligences all the time on our clients.
Take a step.
I know,
You had the upper hand.
I know it's personal, but when you see something like this, you're already thinking investment, you know? So that's why I didn't like audit didn't even come like at all. And maybe that's where you need to now come in and say, this is how you need to read it or how to think about it. Yeah, maybe unpack that fair warning.
All right. So good. So let's take a step back and go back to the top of this paragraph. I may want to draw on your audit skills, right? What are your audit skills, Katleko? I see Cindy has a hand up. Before you answer that, let's hear from Cindy and Denise.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, like, I think there's also the issue perhaps of reading to understand it how you want to understand it. Because for me, when I read that and it said draw on your audit skills, I was thinking like maybe like not audit like audit procedures, but like audits in the meaning of like check that this is fine. So when I saw fair warning, audit skills, I was like, it could still be maybe they give us some due diligence things, and then they say, okay, from your experience, what else do you think we should check, or stuff like that? Not like tuition fees, okay, let's audit this. So I think it was reading to understand how I wanted it to go, and not just reading straight up what is being said.
Okay, fair point, Cindy. Denise?
Hi everyone. I think from my side, I'm not sure if it was because I haven't came across something like that or I was just missing the point. But when they said audit skills, what came into my mind was think about how you'd audit like an investment. Think about the factors that goes into like when you doing evaluation, estimates, fair value, all those things from an auditing perspective. But due diligence, I just never thought of how can auditing affect due diligence.
All right,
Yeah.
good. So let's take a step back again. So when you see due diligence, you guys are thinking the benefits of getting the entity or acquiring the investment, whatever the case may be. What are the risks involved, etc., right? Correct? Or am I wrong?
Sorry, just repeat. I didn't get that
So
properly.
when you see due diligence, you guys are thinking from the benefits of acquiring this entity, the risks involved in acquiring this entity, etc. I see some people are saying yes, right?
Exactly.
But now, okay, if you stop there and then you say, Dennis, I want to sell you a business that I have, right? This is me, Kumu. I want to sell you a business. I sell, let's say, let's just, for argument's sake, let's say petrol. Correct? So I'm a filling station. I want to sell you my business for selling petrol. Okay? Then I'm going to say to you, Dennis, that number one, my revenue per annum is 1 million rand. Going to attract you, right? My profit is 400,000 rand. Correct? I don't have any debts when it comes to my business. I don't owe anyone anything, right? Then I say number four, sometimes I sell fuel on credit to some clients, and I expect that my bad debts are going to be just 50,000 rands. Right. Now, when you take a step back and say, Dennis, I want to buy this. What are the risks involved in buying this business from Kumu? What would you say, Dennis?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one for me to think about it. Maybe if you unpack it a little bit more.
Okay, let's hear Dimakatso. Dimakatso, your hand is up.
Good evening, everyone. For me, when I saw the issue of Julie Dance, what came into my mind was that, for example, I'm working for a public sector. So with us, when we say we are doing a due diligence, it means that before we enter into a transaction with a specific service provider, where all the processes that needs to be followed before appointing that service providers, where they followed. For example, if we are advertising a tender, we would have some functionalities that the bidders need to meet for them to be moved into the next level. And for my duty in that case is for me to ensure that when whether it's the bid evaluation or the bid adjudication committees, when they were sitting down evaluating all these bidders' documents, did they apply their mind? Were they fair when they were doing all these processes? For me, that's what the due diligence mean. So I looked at it from that perspective.
Okay, so, but you see there's a common factor in here. Due diligence, you are checking whether everything is above board. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, so in the context of acquisitions, if you had also researched, you would find that people look at the risks. Likewise, in the public sector, you're going to look at the risk of giving that tender, right? You're going to say, is this thing doable, right? Is it correct that this person is saying, I'll only charge you 200,000 Rand and not R1 million, right? And then you also check their documents, you check the comparing bidders, etc. Those are the procedures you're performing. So either way, you're going to perform some sort of procedures. Now, going back to my example of the fuel station, I see and I like quite a few comments that are coming through in the chat box there, right? So progress says risk is equals to, are you telling the truth, right? I could be lying because I want to sell this thing to you. And if you don't buy that, or sorry, if you buy that without checking anything, you haven't done your due diligence. Correct? I like that. Cindy says risk that they are lying. Could same thing with progress, right? Then Katleko says, from all that you have presented, I would want to verify everything that I have been given. And that's the point now, right? Because if I tell you that I sell at 100,000, sorry, at 1 million every year, you're going to say, Kumu, show me what is the evidence. And what are you going to want to see as evidence of that, right? You will see further down in the scenario told that the auditors are not done yet for that company. So we want to do this on our own. So we're going to do the very same thing that the auditor is going to do, right? I want to audit that revenue. What are my audit procedures on that revenue, on that tuition fees, on that fuel that Kumu is selling me, right? Then you're going to say, well, you say you don't have any liabilities. I want to actually perform tests to test for unrecorded liabilities, right? You said that your bad debts are likely to be just 50,000 rands. I actually want to test that, right? How did you get to that, right? I want evidence of that. So I'm going to perform certain audit procedures, i.e. I'm showing my audit skills, okay? You say that, what was the other thing that I gave an example? My OPEX, whatever the case may be, were 600,000, whatever the case may be. I actually want to do a sample and say, is this correct? Is this guy telling the truth? Okay, those are your audit skills. That's due diligence, right? Don't just look at it from the overview that I just want to make sure that everything's above board. The question is, how do you make sure everything is above board? Do you see it, guys? Are you with me?
So, if I can jump in, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
So are you saying you should actually think of how you would audit each line item on the information that they've given us in the pre-release?
And I want you to hold that thought, because in the information on the day, there's a specific statement, and I'll show you what.
Okay.
Just hold that thought. Right, guys? Is it making a little bit of more sense now, Katleko?
Yes, it is, Kumu.
Okay.
But then in audit, isn't there like a specific type of language in which you guys want us to use when we formulate these procedures? Maybe perhaps that's where the disconnect comes.
So which guy? Which guys?
The auditors, you guys are the auditors.
But remember, we are looking at an entry-level CA. And what does an entry-level CA have? An entry-level CA will know a bit about math, a bit about audit, about IFRS, about tax, etc. Right? So you would know about the ISA. You would know how to obtain audit evidence, right? Because you would see that even if I ask you about audit procedures when you're an internal auditor and I ask you to test controls, you see that the way you formulate those procedures is almost the same, or actually the same with what an external auditor would come and do in formulating those procedures. You still have your how, your what, and your why. What are you looking at and why? Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Thank you, Kumu.
Okay, you're welcome. So let's just move on to the pre-released information again so that we go to the meat of the day, right? So we had the financial information, voila. I don't blame you guys for thinking math, right? Look at that. So much math in there. Financial analysis, okay? Then we had this set of notes, right? You are told about the growth in tuition fees. How does this compare to the other ones, to the other competitors? We're told about teachers resigned at the end of 2018. Does it normally take 2 years to replace those teachers? What does this mean? Does this mean that the school is operating good? I don't want to go into the math detail, but think about it, right? When you're doing your due diligence, you want to know all these things. Then I summarized some triggers for you. I put in a lot of financial management triggers in there, right? Your factors to consider in your mergers and acquisitions, your valuation considerations, and don't forget the Companies Act, because you've got mergers and acquisitions provisions in the Companies Act, right? And that also ties into your audit. And on the left-hand side there, I just tell you about the things I've been highlighting in the documents. Likewise on this very same slide, but what was interesting here is that now you've got three things. I even put in accounting for you. Why? Because they mentioned, the fair value. Okay. What would you do in your detailed research? If you'd never seen due diligence, or if you've seen it from one aspect, you would want to go, what are these due diligence procedures? Where do I do them? Why do I do them? What are examples of these due diligence procedures? And like what all you were saying, you guys could be you'll be asked to review the valuation. You could be asked to perform the valuation. It's a math task. You could be asked to perform the due diligence, perform analytical procedures, financial analysis, etc. You could be asked about risk of material misstatement in the information that Kumu is giving you about his fuel station. In this case, the tuition fees and whatever, that's school. Correct? What are the chances that these things are wrong? Right? On the same page thus far, before we dive into the information on the day. Information on the day. You were given document E. Atara, your hand is up.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, Kumo.
Hello.
I just the due diligence. I didn't know. I know due diligence from MENEC, so I didn't know the audit side of it. So as a result, my preparation was not on the audit side. I don't know if I'm making sense.
So I don't believe you didn't know the audit side. Yes, somebody might not have told you about the audit side, but the issue is that you had to make a connection, right? You know the due diligence in math. You know the benefits, the risks, the disadvantages, all those things, right?
Yeah.
But how do you confirm that the risk is not there? How do you confirm that the benefit is there? How do you confirm that the disadvantage is there? Those are your procedures that you would then perform, right? And you would see that you were told in the information on that you see that actually in this slide, right? You're told the level of assurance provided by an external audit, right?
Yeah.
You would know that, hey, I need audit procedures here, right? I need to confirm using language similar to my audit procedures because we want reasonable assurance, right?
Okay.
Very important.
Okay.
So those are the links.
No, it makes sense. Thank you so much, Kumu.
You're welcome. All right, you can lower your hand if that is answered, and then I can proceed. Right, so in document E, on the day, we were told, hello again, this guy wants to terrorize you, right? To ensure that we make an informed valuation of Eagle's open school. And this was cruel in my view, because already now your mind is on, I'm going to be asked about evaluation. Does that make sense? But this is the thing now when it comes to APC, right? You need to be able to adapt to changes introduced on the day. Okay, so they can set the seat and they say, well, valuation, but then they go and ask you something else. You need to be able to show that as an entry-level CA, I can adapt to that change. I can handle this. Throw everything you can at me, but I will thrive. Okay, so I believe that it is important that we perform a due diligence on the figures relating to the school's financial performance in the 2021 financial year. What does this mean? This means that I want us to make sure we verify these figures that they're giving us. Do you agree? If you agree, just put a thumbs up. I don't see any thumbs up. Does it mean that people don't agree? I only see Atara's thumbs up. Do you agree, guys? Can I take silence as yes, we agree? Or can I take silence as I'm confused?
We agree, Kumu.
We agree.
Good. That's more like it, right? Remember, we said I like interactive sessions. Right. Now, we were then told that for this purpose, Now, for this purpose of doing the due diligence, performing a due diligence, we need to ensure that these figures are credible. So get evidence that this is credible, i.e. my audit evidence. And we're given a hint at a level similar to that by an external audit, which is reasonable assurance. So how do you get to reasonable assurance? You obtain sufficient, appropriate audit evidence. Okay, so give me supporting documents. I want supporting documents. That's the language of an auditor, right? Now, and I want you to lead our team on this. So now you're a leader, right? You will have access to all the financial documents and records. Why were we told this? As well as management of Eaglin. Why were you told this? Because they are putting you in the same scenario as an external auditor. An external auditor will have access to supporting documents, access to management. So that means when you draft your procedures or talk about your due diligence procedures, you might as well assume you can get anything that you ask for. If you want a bank statement, you'll get it. If you want an invoice, you will get it. If you want communication with the lawyers, management will grant you that permission. If you want the whole debtors book, you can get it, right? That's what that meant. Did you guys miss that part, or did you pick it up? Did you miss it? Did you pick it up?
On my side, I think I missed it. I just thought basically they're telling me that I can get any information that I want, but not to put myself in the shoes of an auditor.
Because you want the same level of assurance, right?
Yes, but just a quick question whilst you're there. So Kuma, you say, if they say they're putting you in the shoes of an auditor, so in other words, if you, for instance, want to audit Elgin, you were in a position to.
Yeah, so when I say you are being put in the shoes of an auditor here, I'm saying you must wear your thinking of an external auditor in drafting audit procedures. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Welcome. Aya, did you miss this? Aya Bulela.
No, I kind of got it, but I didn't draft the procedures like an auditor, but I did interrogate each each of
Saying
those.
that this doesn't make sense. If I was an auditor, I would do 1, 2, 3, right?
Yes, but I didn't put it in a
like that.
audit procedure format. So I missed the C because of that, I think.
All right. And in this case, it's not really about, making sure that you match exactly the external audit, but you need to show that you've got the knowledge of what to test for, what to look for when I want to be happy with this number. All right. Atara, your hand is up.
Yes, Kumo. I just don't understand why. Okay, I'm not complaining, but why Psycha would teach us the subjects separately, and then when APC comes, they expect us to think about them as integrated. Like now, due diligence is for when you're evaluating a project or an investment or something like that. So for me to be expected to think like an external auditor, I don't know. I think I struggled with like what they meant actually, because I was stuck in that this is a manic question. So for me to do auditing, it just felt wrong.
Exactly. And that's the problem, and that's the issue, Atara, right? Because what they're saying is that as an entry-level CA, right? And this is my view. I'm not saying that is what they're saying, but this is my view, right? So don't take it out of context. As an entry-level CA, I expect that you know the key disciplines of accounting, which would be your accounting, your financial accounting, your financial management, or your if you want to go with your strategy, risk, governance, etc. Your audit and your taxation, right? And these are the things that you have known in the pipeline from your BCom to your CTA to ITC. That's why these three things are prerequisites before you come to APC, right?
Yeah.
And before you write APC, you need to go through a certain process to make you understand the thinking level of an entry-level CA. If you're given something, how do you integrate it to something? What do you think about it about when you see it, right? And that's why you will have to go through the professional course for you to write APC, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It
So
does.
So there is groundwork for them to be able, even if you look at ITC, it was at an integrated level, right? You could get audit when you're reading accounting. So
Yes.
that's very, very important. So it would be integrated, but what's important is that you've got 5 days to research, right? What could this be? Without zoning into saying, I like math, I think this is math. But you have to take a step back and say, what else could be the issue here? For example, here I was told, I want to tap into your audit skills, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you already think, well, what does an auditor do? An auditor thinks about risks, an auditor thinks about misstatements, an auditor has audit procedures, an auditor test controls, right? And in this particular instance, we're talking about due diligence. So if I perform due diligence, what am I doing? I'm verifying something, I'm auditing something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks,
Okay.
Kumo.
You're welcome. Pamela and then Joy before I move on.
Hi, Kumo.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but it sounds like you're touching your mic or something is happening against your mic. Are you there, Pamela? You're muted now.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Maybe can I share how did I understood this after the reflection though, not during December.
Okay.
You mentioned something that we must understand what is the due diligence in terms of financial aspects. And it's something that I did not do during December. I saw due diligence and then I thought immediately of risks, advantage and disadvantages. So that's why I was struggling to link it with auditing skills. And then when I watched the reflection video, when you mentioned that we must understand due diligence in respect of financial aspects, I Googled that quickly. And it says, in conducting financial due diligence, you and your team should look to take on the role of an audit committee. The process begins by analyzing 5 years of financial statements, income statement, balance sheet, etc. Then that's when I understood, I was like, oh, I went to the paper without understanding what are the due diligence in respect to financial aspects. If only I knew, I would have linked to the audit skill.
Exactly. And diligence means doing something very well, right? Due means something you have to do, right? So if you think about it, you have to look at something very well. And this was in the context of, yes, you can look at the risks, the advantages, but also you've got the numbers to look at. These guys are telling you that we've got tuition fees of 40,000 Rand, for example. Is that correct? Is this what is happening? How do I verify that? Show me that people are paying 40,000 Rand, I like that. Thanks.
Yeah, and when you continue researching about this due diligence, it talks about performing analytical procedures.
Because you have to analyze the numbers, right? You have to analyze everything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Joy?
Hi, Kumu, and everybody. So, Kumu, when I saw this task, I saw auditing. So, I mean, I went all out audit, I thought that I was doing the most here. I even took this thing as far as considering macro factors, like your competitors, why is this person selling? Like that's what I looked into. But then when I saw my result, it didn't reflect what like how I thought I did well, but clearly I didn't. So maybe there's something that I'm lacking, but I don't think it's technical. Maybe it's the layout. I don't know. Maybe you could just guide us on how to lay out this type of
So I like what you just told me, right? You said you went into the macro things of macro side of things. You thought about competitors, etc. Right?
Yeah.
But I want you to hold that thought. Enjoy in the next slide, right? When we look at what the task is, I want us to come back to you, and you have to remind me so I don't forget. You have to remind me, right? So I just want you to hold that thought, but make sure you remind me in the next slide.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. And then we were told that, but given that time is of the essence, your work must not only be effective, but also efficient, right? Then you have to think about things that make your procedures effective, your way of doing things effective. You're going to think about using computers. You're going to think about making sure that you get something that gives you reasonable assurance without looking at a lot of things because of the time that presses us. Now, we were also told, while I have not yet received the management accounts, right? So these are the budgets, right? 1 Jan to 2021, 30 November from the school. I should have this within the next few days. That means you're going to have them, right? So you're being told about something you can use to perform your analysis, to scrutinize, right? Then we're told we will be able to use these for due diligence purposes. Okay, now there, you can use those to make analytics, okay? The external auditors of the Eaglin Open School issued their audit report for the financial year ended 31 December 2020 in March 2021, but have indicated that they are not available to assist us with due diligence. We also cannot wait until their audit report on the 2021 financial statements, right? So that means that we don't have assurance from a financial statements perspective. So that means that I need to actually verify whatever I'm being told that these are our numbers. I actually need to audit it because they've never been audited before. There's no audit report. So I have to do some work there to get reasonable assurance. Now, this links to what we were told about the level of assurance. We will therefore have to undertake the due diligence ourselves. So that means that you're being told that there's no audit report. In essence, here they're saying we're going to have to perform the audit ourselves here, right? To be comfortable with the numbers. Does that make sense? I hope I don't pronounce the name incorrectly. Molebohe.
Hi, Kumo.
Hello.
So with me, I think this question or this task, I think the problem for me started during the pre-release period. I think one of the mistakes I did was to look at the difference between due diligence procedures and an audit instead of looking at similarities. So I think going into the task, going into the exam, I think at the back of my mind, I had that thing that audit and due diligence procedures are somewhat different. And I think when I got this task, there are certain things that threw me off. And I think that was when we were told not to spend, to remember that time is of essence.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I'm going to perform audit procedures, that will definitely take time. So it confirms to me that I'm not supposed to do like audit procedures. So for me, I think I sort of limited myself. And I also, at the back of my mind, had that thing that auditors are still going to do the audit. So I can't be doing the same thing that's still going to be done. So I think I sort of limited myself on this.
Yeah, because you're told
answering
you're not
this
going to wait for the auditors, you see. So then you put a full stop on yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that you're seeing the mistakes, right? It's not that you don't know the stuff. It's how you read the data, how you interpret it, how you analyze the stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Mole. All right, so let's continue. And Joy, this is the paragraph that you should be best friends with. I've started drafting the due diligence procedures, right? So somebody has started. What can you be asked? Complete it or review what is started. So to be performed on selected components of the statement of profit or loss. So that means selected components such as your revenue, your OPEX, your bad debts, sorry, not bad debts, your employee cost, etc. However, as my knowledge in this area is rather rusty, I would appreciate if you could review my envisaged procedures. So what are we doing? We are reviewing, we're giving him feedback. We're saying, this is correct or this is not correct. And this is missing 1, 2, 3. Okay? And this is how you can make it better. And I've put the and also there in red because you asked, and document any concerns you may have regarding these. What are these? The procedures that he's giving you, right? Also, describe any further key procedures that should be performed on the selected components. Okay? Describe any further key procedures. So that means that what is missing, you're going to have to tell them that this is what you're missing and these are the procedures you should be performing, right? But in doing so, don't give any lengthy list of generic procedures, right? We will use this document as a basis for finalizing the due diligence work to be performed on these components of the statement of P&L. Now, that is the thing, right? And Joy, this is where the issue was. You were told about specific things. Number 1, review the procedures I've given you, right? Number 2, give me the concerns regarding the procedures I've given you. Number 3, what are the further procedures you would perform here, right? But then you thought about the other macro things, competitors and doing all those, but that was not the question he was asking. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Do you see where you missed it?
Yeah.
Happy?
Happy. I was trying to be like a high level student here.
Okay.
You know, just giving him something that he doesn't need.
Exactly. So guys, do you see what the task was? Cindy, you've got a hand up.
So when I saw that phrase where, however, my knowledge in this area is rather rusty. So I don't know if like I was just forcing to look for ethics everywhere, and that was what took time out of what the time I had for the task, because I imagine that, okay, they're not going to say, give me feedback on my ethics. So like in such an instance, like I went into saying now, like as a side note, as a CFO, you should have a level of competence, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that took time. So when do I know, like, when I should
Take a step back. Take a step back, Cindy, and say, so let's say I'm your boss, right? And then I tell you, Cindy, that my knowledge on due diligence procedures is a little bit rusty, right? It means I know my stuff, but sure, it's been a long time and things could be going on, right? Does that necessarily mean that I'm not ethical? Or you are thinking that, Kumu, you need some CPD here?
I was thinking in the aspect of like professional competence in UK, like, are you competent?
Yeah, but remember,
you don't know.
In the aspect of professional competence in UK, it means that you need to be to continuously develop, right? Your continued professional development, your CPD, right? So you can even suggest to me and say, you know, Kumu, it might be worthwhile as well after this project for you to maybe just go on some sort of training for or some CPD event on due diligence procedures or acquisitions, etc. Right? You don't necessarily have to tell me that I'm not ethical, right? Because it doesn't mean I'm not ethical, right? I might be missing something that I need continued professional development on.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay, and how you say it is very important. Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. Now moving on. Still, this is information we were given on the day, right? Here we were told revenue, right? This is the component of the P&L because he kept on referring to the components of the profit or loss. Revenue, and the revenue here we're talking about is tuition fees. Now, these are his planned procedures, right? Ryan's. Multiply the number of learners in the school with the annual tuition fee and compare to the tuition fee revenue recorded in the management accounts for FY 2021. Right? Now, this is some sort of like an analytical procedure, right? But is it enough? Does it give you reasonable assurance to say, that revenue line item is good? Does it, guys?
No.
It doesn't. So what do? You tell Ryan that, yay, this is just an analytical procedure. You're just comparing to your budget, right? But this is not enough. What happens when you miss a variance or when there's a variance? What are you going to do? Are you going to follow up with somebody? How are we going to substantiate management's comments when we get it from them? What documents are we going to get? Okay, so number one, what you needed to do here was to actually recognize that, to recognize the nature of the risk, right? The objective of the due diligence, i.e. revenue could be overstated because somebody is trying to sell something to us, right? Or number two, expenses could be understated, right? Then you need to identify and say, well, regarding what you just gave me, I've got 1, 2, 3 concerns, but this is how you fix it. Then you give him further procedures. Then you think about, because they talked about efficiency and effectiveness, you think about your innovative procedures, right? Then you also then talk about your tuition fees, and then you go on to explain the major concern, right? We've already talked about it, overstatement of revenue, because that is the risk, right? You talk about the analytical procedure that he's giving, but what are the shortcomings, right? So you then also, because in the scenario you were told about the accounting system, we were told about the learner management system, I think, the LMS. You'd want to talk about how you extract reports from that LMS and how you use it to then select a sample and inspect, for example, your price lists. If there are any discounts that are given, where would that be sitting? Where are the policies? How do I move around with that? You would then need to think about whether there have been any material changes, right, to the number of learners during the year. You can't just take, the number of learners, but you think about what are the changes? Is the material? What is it? Okay, how do I avoid duplications in the number of learner or learner registrations, right? Would there be a duplication in a learner registration and I then double count them? Because that is a way somebody can actually overstate the revenue, right? And to actually find any fraud in the learners list that you have, for example, you want to look for fields that do not actually have personal data or that are blank fields, because that could point or could indicate a risk of a fraudulent learner that you've been given, right? A ghost learner. You would have to think about how how they didn't give consideration to discounts, or how Ryan didn't give consideration to discounts. You would have to think about that if they record every bit of revenue, it might not be everything that is recoverable, right? Therefore, we must have sufficient work on bad debts, and we'll talk about bad debts in a little bit. Then I think the other key thing that you wanted to, let me just see, I think I see a message coming through. No, it's not. Oh, I see. This task needs one to be present on the day. Yes, indeed, Gracious. You have to be present. You have to be able to adapt to the information on the day, right? Then you think about the scope of work that is being proposed in this procedure that you see on this on the screen, right? You think about how it would be appropriate to include procedures to determine whether there will be material changes to the figures in 2022, for example. So we're given budget of 2021. So you would then, for example, inspect service quality interviews with parents and learners to ensure that they are satisfied with the quality of the service. This could support the number of learners. You could inquire from the from management about the number of learners that they have indicated or that have indicated that they will leave the school or join the school, for example. You actually want to know about those numbers. Are they making sense? Does that make sense, ladies and gents? I see a hand up. Gracious?
Hi, Kumu, and hello, everyone. I just want to confirm something on these procedures. So in essence, these were substantive procedures that were required.
Yeah, because you want to give reasonable assurance.
Okay.
And they would include substantive analytical procedures as well, right? What is missing in that?
Okay, right, thanks.
Molebohe?
Hi, Kumu. I think my question is, it's an add-on on what Gracious just asked. So I wanted to ask if for this, it would be appropriate to suggest performing like test of controls. Or is it only restricted to substantive procedures? And how does one determine that?
Okay, so when it comes to controls, you would have to think about, for example, if you think about your 315, because I see how you want to link it. If you think about your 315, your ISO 315 revised, right? If you think about your risk of material misstatement, which is your inherent risk and your control risk, right?
Yeah.
Now, if the auditor does not intend on testing controls, right? The risk of material misstatement would essentially just be the inherent risk, right? If you don't intend to rely on controls. Now, if we want to be efficient with things, we're told to be efficient, right? Take a step back and say, ideally combined approach would make sense, etc. You've got access to the information, but would it lessen the amount of work you have to do, or now you have to go in and understand the internal controls as well before you even start testing them, right? Would that still be efficient, etc.? It could help you in verifying the numbers, but does it really help? Why won't substantive procedure just help you because you've got this number and you've got this supporting? Why then care about the controls now?
Okay.
Atara?
Hi, Kumar.
Hello.
For me, the first thing I thought about when I saw this revenue tuition fees, I thought revenue also consists of the entrance fees, and I don't see them mentioning them here. So was I correct in mentioning that we also need to test or to, what's the word again? But to make sure that the entrance fees is correct.
Right. So he gave us the procedures, tuition fees, right? I then guess you have to think about the materiality of the entrance fees. Does it really compare to the tuition fees? If it does, yes, it's the point you can say, well, why can't we include also the entrance fees or whatever the case may be? But in this case, if we were to look at the tuition fees, what are your concerns?
Oh, okay. But then there was also that point, I forgot what document that was, where they said that their parents are requesting for forgiveness of the tuition fees. I'm mixing things, ne? Okay.
What's on your slide? Do you see that the entrance fee compared to the 15.4 million, you've got 132,000. Would you really focus your attention on entrance fees, or you want that big apple?
Not really, but I wouldn't want to not talk about it. Even if it's just one sentence, I would want to say something. I don't know.
But if you do a risk-based approach, you apply a materiality, because in audit you apply materiality, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe you can mention it if it's material, but it likely might miss your selection of materiality. If you think about it, 15.4 million compared to 132,000.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I was not even thinking materiality at this point, but it's a good
Don't audit
point.
everything in audit.
Wow.
Not absolute assurance.
Thank you.
Okay, cool, awesome. Cindy, I'm going to take the last end after Cindy progress and then move on to the next slide.
So I wanted to ask, I'm not sure if I was being extreme. So like I'm thinking, okay, now these tuition fees, like you mentioned about, could there be fictitious learners? So I was thinking now, perhaps now you need to go and select a sample of these learners and I don't know, call the parents and see that these are actual learners who are actually enrolled. But then I thought, is that not going to take time? Would it not be quicker to check the controls, like who can actually go and edit these things, what is required? So now I was kind of torn.
Yeah, but remember, test of controls alone are not sufficient. You also need to do some test of detail, right? So if you tell me that you've got 400 learners, you've got 400 employees, I want to know the existence of those employees or learners.
So it wouldn't be too much to say that for the revenue now you need to go and select and actually go and not just go by the I don't know, fee statement.
You could talk about, I want us
you have
to
to go and
verify
call
these
these
learners.
people.
Yeah, I want to verify these learners. I want to verify occurrence of revenue here.
Oh, okay.
All right. Progress?
Yeah, thanks, Kumu. Confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear. I think my wife in the next room can hear you.
All right, cool. Thanks. So quick one. I think my issue here on this question is to separate the audit, the given procedure review and the consent. To me, it appears as if these two are separate expectations. So can you kindly confirm for me if there are two separate expectations and how we can separate those in our response so that we don't appear to be probably giving a fake.
The first thing is you were asked about the concerns you have regarding the procedures that he has given you. And those are the things you needed to criticize and say, yeah, I'm not happy about 1, 2, 3, 4 because of this, right? Then he said, give me further procedures that will be key to addressing that, right? Then you say, well, now we have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that make sense? Because it's following what the task is, the task wants. Look at that. Review my envisaged procedures, right? And document any concerns you may have regarding these. Then also describe any further key procedures. So those are two components of the task. Does that make sense? Happy progress?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Stop. No. Okay. So my envisage. No, really.
Sorry, you're
review
breaking.
my envisaged procedures. Then there is this and document and concerns regarding this. So are these okay? Probably my network is training. So if you can hear me, that's all it is. You've just said you can move on. That's fine.
Okay, maybe just drop something in the chat for me because you're breaking and I can't clearly hear you. Okay. Nyasha? This is the last thing I'm taking before we move on to the next slide.
Thank you. So for me, I did not see that we are auditing in this task. I went purely finance. So how do I avoid that? Because I was hitting my finance very hard and I never saw sneaking in of auditing. I see what you're saying right now, but I missed the ball. When
did you also miss this this pre-released information, Nyasha? I may again want to draw on your audit skills. When we brief the professional services firm that we plan to contract to undertake a due diligence on the key financial aspects. So we'll be telling them, this is what we want you to audit, right? This is what we want you to look at. And then you're given a fair warning. And then on the day, you were then told, for this purpose, we need to ensure that these figures are credible. How do you ensure something is credible? You need to perform verification procedures. Then you were told, at a level of assurance similar to that provided by an external audit, right? So you have to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. How do you do that? Perform audit procedures that are testing the detail. Does that make sense?
Now, yes, but for me, I thought what basically they're saying is, okay, you're an auditor, you have got all the skill, we want you to do finance because we expect you to bring in your finance things and principles.
But that's not like, that's not what he then asked, right? He then said, review my so actually I started drafting the due diligence procedures to be performed on selected components of the statement of profit or loss. However, as my knowledge in this area is a bit rusty, I would appreciate if you could review my envisaged procedures. So he's saying, I'm giving you this, now review this. And number 2, document any concerns you may have regarding my procedures. Number 3, describe any further key procedures that should be performed on the selected components. And in your mind, you should be thinking, right, at the level that is at reasonable assurance, like an external audit. What are you missing here? Do you see that? Yeah, sure. You need to put it together.
I see they worked so hard, but I think my thing was due diligence and not meeting it every day. Then I went there and got stuck there. Even when they said procedures, I just thought they're saying what steps in that due diligence do you do? Like what questions do you ask? What documents will you ask to verify that? But purely finance, never thinking sessions like you're doing now.
Mm-hmm. And like a simple example I gave you guys earlier, when I'm not sure if you were on the call earlier, and I said, if I'm selling you my fuel business, I tell you that I'm selling 1 million rand of fuel. You want to verify that. How are you going to know that I'm selling 1 million before you buy it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Now we're talking about employee costs. See, there's something in the chat there. Okay, Progress says, got your explanation, Kumu. It's just that I thought review envisaged procedures and documenting concerns or the procedures are 2 different expectations, right? So review, it means review my work. Look at my work, right? Check my work. Does it make sense? Is this correct, right? And then in checking that, you're going to have concerns. What are those? Then you have to document them, okay? So that is a different expectation. And then, so that means that you needed to say, well, I've looked at your work, I've reviewed your work, and these are the issues. And then key procedures to fix them was another expectation. Right, now employee costs. Perform analytical procedures on the month-to-month total payroll costs and resolve any major variances by discussions with school's CEO. Now here, you need to identify concerns regarding this. Regarding the proposed procedures, right? You need to explain the flows that Ryan actually has in his procedure for OPEX and additional procedures that would be required. So if we look at employee costs, we are thinking, well, the major concern is the understatement, right? They would say that we have 500,000 worth of employee cost as opposed to 1.5 million, right? Because they're trying to inflate the profit so that you are tricked into buying. So that's a risk. So how do we respond to the risk of understatement? That means we need to perform a completeness test. For example, unrecorded liabilities, unrecorded employee costs. And how do we do that? Well, even though you agree that an analytical month-to-month would would be effective, right? Detailed work must still be done on at least one of the months. Select a sample there. How are you going to test those payroll costs, right? And you need to think about it. If I've got this so many teachers or instructors, right, working at the school, and they're showing on the payroll, right? I need to actually identify the staff whose remuneration is not reflected in the payroll, i.e., where is the understatement, right? So I've got Kumu, I've got Katleko, I've got Denise. Those are my all three teachers, but I only see Kumu and Katleko who've got money coming through here. So what's happening to the other one, right? So you would want to make sure that we've made that comparison to make sure that there are no teachers or list of teachers that are missing on the employee cost in the payroll. You would want to inspect the contracts that Kumu has, that Katleko have, right, as teachers for their remuneration packages and how these are filtering and if these have been recorded. You would actually want to test, you know, the payroll deductions. You want to test the sample of the payroll deductions, the payee, the pension, the medical aid, the UIF. Has it been recorded? Because they might not record it in order to understate the expenses. So we would want to perform work on that. Those are additional things we want to perform on payroll. Now, if you've audited employee costs before, or you've looked at the payroll and personnel cycle before and the risks involved in there, you'll do very well in this task. But do you see the trend, guys? Do you see the things that people would ideally miss if they don't verify? We're told we've got access to all the documentation, so I can perform these things. Cindy?
Sorry, I don't know if I'm thinking like a criminal, but like, if you really want to hide an employee, would you have contracts for them? Like, if they could have like a back, like, you know, be working without contracts or something like that, like the risk could still be there, like for completion specifically. Like that's, I feel like with such things, I always struggle with how am I gonna put something proper for like a completion type of situation? Because if you really wanted to hide something, you would go to any length.
Right. Now, this is very, very important. I like that you asked this, but remember, we said in the context of this, the risk is understatement, not overstatement, right? Now, if you've got understatement, we're saying that they have not recorded something they should have recorded. They have not recorded Kumu's salary that they should have recorded, yet they have Kumu as an employee, correct? Therefore, I want to make sure that Kumu's contract that I pick up is actually recorded. Then you've got the other side where you're saying overstatement, which is not our risk in this case, right? Where you've got payroll or payroll costs that come through for somebody who is not there. Therefore, when you select something there, you then say, show me the supporting documents for this. Is this actually a valid payroll cost? Do you see the difference, the direction of testing versus the risk that we have?
So what I'm thinking is that we've got 10 teachers, and then in order to reduce our cost on the income statement, we just pretend we have 5. So it's still a case of like, so there's ghost teachers now that are working, we're paying them behind the scenes, and we're not putting it on the financial statements. So like, how are you going to find those other 5? Because now you've got these 5, you're going to check, oh, okay, it matches to the financial statements. You think the amount is correct. Meanwhile, there's another 5 teachers.
Yeah, so are you saying that in the accounting records, you wouldn't have recorded Kumu's salary, but on your list of teachers, you've got Kumu on your list of teachers?
No, Kumo's not on the list of teachers, but he's teaching at the school.
Good. So how would you then verify the completeness of the list of teachers? Because that's the starting point, right?
Oh.
How do you verify the completeness of the list of teachers?
I don't know. Maybe I'd go to the school and walk around, or I don't know. Like, I feel like that's
actually a good example in auditing, right? You want to make sure that this teacher is actually on the list. So you walk into the class, you see this teacher is teaching, you ask them for their name, their ID, whatever, you follow it to the list. If you don't find them there, then you've got an issue. Do you see?
Oh, okay. I see.
It's an example, right? It's not always the only thing you can do, but it's an example of a procedure you can do. Okay, always test the completeness of the thing you're using. Like it. Okay, awesome. Guys, I'm running out of time. So we're done with employee costs. Let us talk about the operating costs, including bad debts. Now here, it was key to explain the flow in the procedures here, right? Because Ryan says compare the expenses in the management accounts FY 2021 to the comparable amount in FY 2020. Management accounts reflect both the current and prior. Resolve any expenditure line item variances in excess by 10% by gathering further information, right? Why are you saying 10%? Why is 10% valid? You need to actually make sure that, well, before relying on the comparable prior year information reflected in the management accounts, we should first verify these amounts. Are they correct, right? We compare that to the full year trial balance, for example, which should be reconciled to the audited financial statements in the prior year. You'd talk about your major risk, right? i.e. these expenses are understated, right? Because you want to show more profit. Therefore, you would want to, when investigating variances, you'd want to direct efforts on investigating instances where the variance is favorable and the amount could be material, right? You want to talk about making sure that the analytical procedure is actually meaningful. And what do we do? The types of operating expenses should be analyzed to ensure that this time-based comparison is appropriate to detect possible understatement of expenses. You want to, for example, say, well, the time-based comparison of the bad debts expense in FY 2021 to 2020 is not actually meaningful, right? We should rather evaluate the reasonableness of the bad debts expense with reference to understanding the process that management followed to quantify the bad debts. How do they do that? What is the policy around that? If I look at the data's age analysis and inspect it to identify any long outstanding debts from the system, what then happens? What is the quantum of such outstanding debt? And how do I verify that? How do I make sure that the allowance for credit losses actually makes sense? You want to think about the procedures to identify unrecorded liabilities, because unrecorded liabilities go in hand with your expenses. If you don't record your liability, you might not have recorded your expense. So you'd want to perform search for unrecorded liabilities or test unrecorded liabilities. You can use or extract lists of creditors and compare that to the previous year. Those that were there, have they been paid? If so, what is the evidence that they've gone out, etc. And all those kind of things. The reconciliations are also very important. So those are the additional things you could have told Ryan about. Any questions on OPEX and bad debts before I move on? But you guys are starting to get the gist of it, right? The things that you would then do to verify those numbers. Too tough, hard to swallow.
I think it's now starting to make sense, eh?
Okay, good. I like that, Timakats. I like that. Cindy?
Sorry, I wanted to ask, so would checking the listing for completion or all those type of things fall under generic, or do you still put it in?
Well,
like
here you are
checking the
talking about,
expense listing
so it would be generic if you just, you're just speaking about things in general. But if you say, yeah, we've got an issue with employee costs, I want to make sure that all the teachers are involved. Don't just say employee costs in general. Be specific. I want to make sure the list of teachers is complete. How do I do that? Do you see that?
Oh, okay.
Hi, Kuma.
Hi.
Basically, if I understand you very well, is that for all the three line items that we were given, we needed to develop audit procedures, substantive audit procedures, also covering all the assertions that they relate to.
No, the assertions that have got the risk. In this case, for expenses, it was understatement. For revenue, it was overstatement. I.e., if it's overstatement, we're talking about occurrence of revenue.
Yes.
Not okay. If we're talking about understatement, we're talking about the completeness of expenses. Does that make sense?
Okay. But then now when I'm saying I'm comparing them, the figure, for example, for the employee cost to what is in the trial balance, wouldn't that be a generic audit procedure?
All right, so I'm not sure which statement you're stuck on when it comes to comparing, but when you're doing your comparisons, it's about identifying that before relying on the comparable prior information. What can I do, right? What can we reconcile? That's the issue. Are you with me?
Okay.
Right? So you're actually addressing a specific risk. You're not being generic here. You're talking about, well, I'm worried about the bad debt here. I'm worried about because of the following. The risk is understatement, right? But how do I drill down? Well, before we can even use what you're telling me there, because he says, compare the expenses, but before we can actually compare, there's something that we need to do for that particular aspect, right? And then you say it. It's not in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Now, looking at the last part of the information on the day, we were given a small note at the end of the email. The personal assistant to the CEO of Elgin Open School, who knows everything that happens at the school, is willing to share information with us openly in exchange for a guarantee that she will retain her job following the acquisition. I would therefore suggest that we consider using her as a source of evidence wherever possible, as this should simplify the due diligence process for us. Right? Now, here you've got a concern with this statement, right? How are you going to respond to Ryan here, right? Well, you actually need to appropriately evaluate the use of the personal assistant, right, as a source of information. Would this be reliable information, number one, before we can depend on this personal assistant? Number one, we need to know her integrity, her trustworthiness, her knowledge, her understanding of the matter on which she is being questioned, the level of judgment, the insight required to formulate a response from if we get it, right? Then you also needed to think about, well, you know, whilst the personal assistant could serve as a valuable source of information, right, in doing this due diligence investigation, verification, whatever the case may be, I'm concerned, or you're concerned, right, about the issue of agreeing to guarantee her a job, right? That should be a concern. You should actually flag that, right? For example, if we do not obtain permission, right, to gather information from the personal assistant, this could actually put a job at risk. You would also want to note that if we wish to proceed using the personal assistant and this procedure, you actually want to give recommendations to Ryan, right? For example, ask for permission from vendors and request permission to include access to the personal assistant as a source of information, right? If this is not possible, we can't actually use this personal assistant, right, without the, especially with things around, you know, POPI and all those things. You can't just be taking things without getting permission. So that was also key for you to identify when it came to this last bit of work. And my last slide, Amole, you've got a hand up.
Hi, Kumu. I think my question for this paragraph is that the task was to review the procedures given, as well as giving further procedures on the components we were given. How does one feature such things into their answers? Is it something that you write even if it's not part of what you were asked to do?
Yeah, so here we asked about the key procedures, right? And now you went on to say, well, we want to consider using it as a source of information, right? So your procedures would require the stuff that you're getting from her. So you also need to express your concerns regarding that, because she's going to form part of what you're going to do. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, so your sources of audit evidence, very important. Okay. Cindy?
So I think for this task as a whole, like, I felt that there were kind of three components to it. And for me, like, in terms of a timing perspective, I'm just thinking, even if you put 1 full hour on this task and you've divided 8 hours by a task, like, you've got the review, you've got the additional procedures, you've got this consideration. Like, how do you decide where to put more emphasis? Because even in this small note, like, there's a lot of things to consider. If you say yes, like, now you're guaranteeing someone a job. If you say no, like, how else are you going to get the information? Like, all these components have a lot of information. How do I know which one I should focus on?
Remember, you shouldn't confuse yourself. How am I going to get information when I say no? Remember, we're told we've got full access to the information. We've got full access to management, right? So to start things with, this personal assistant is not even necessary, right? But you don't have to write home about the procedures. You don't have to write a lot of stuff, right? You're just saying you're missing 1, 2, 3 key procedures, because we're told about key procedures, right? You don't have to write a whole 3 pages, 2 pages about procedures, additional procedures, but just say the following is key for me. The following is key for me. We should do this. You didn't do it in your procedure. And that's it, right? That should be sufficient. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. All right, cool. You can lower your hand if that is answered, Cindy. Atara?
Hi, Kumo. For me, this paragraph amounted to fraud, not bribery. I felt like them having to give her a job once she's given the information was like information in exchange for money. So I regarded it as bribery. Was I wrong?
Well, I think that is where you express your concern about agreeing to guarantee a job, right? So that's why you're explaining your concerns, right?
Yes.
I said it at a high level, so yeah. But just be careful of drilling through. Sometimes you don't have to write too much information. Express your concern and move on, you know?
But what was your main concern here?
Why would I guarantee a job? Why should I be guaranteeing a job? Do I even have that power? You know? Is it right for her to say, I'll only give you information and help you if I guarantee a job? Does that make sense? Can even be a pressure for me to breach my fundamental principles.
Yeah, but also this lady, I think it's a lady, ne? This lady is not loyal. Do you want to hire someone who's disloyal? Like,
yeah, but you see, that's why I said you have to question the integrity of this person, the trustworthiness in the context of the information they're going to give us. I don't care about how they're going to do the job, but the information they're giving us when we're performing our due diligence, that's where my issue should be. If I think about the integrity in that context, because if she's doing this, I can't trust it. What would it mean to the source of evidence that I'm getting? That is the relevant aspect. So don't go off the trail and start thinking about other things that are not key to the task.
Okay, I just didn't want to miss the ethics part. Thanks.
You are obsessed with the ethics part, eh?
I am. I'm gonna stop
but
that.
You have to make it make sense. You can't just do it blindly.
Yeah.
Dennis?
Hi, Kumu. I just have 2 things. I just wanna clarify. So the thought process is obviously we have access to management and information. So her saying she'll give us all the information was irrelevant, but we just needed to point it out. And then the second part is I'm also inclined, just to confirm in terms of ethics, like what you are saying. Doesn't it the fact that, you know, she's kind of bribing her way, that's another story. But the fact that Ryan is suggesting that we consider using her as a source of information, doesn't it have like an issue with director's conduct, or, you know, just to highlight something to say if he is a CA, then there's a breach of CIP, you know, the code of conduct and so forth.
So it depends in what context, right? That's why you have to say, I have concerns, reservations regarding guaranteeing a job, right? But if she's got information that we can use, we have to consider whether she's trustworthy, she's got integrity, etc. There's nothing wrong with using the information. There's something wrong with guaranteeing her job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just still a little bit in between. So you're saying it's fine to guarantee someone?
It's because you are concluding and you've got a view before you actually think about it, right? Because you saw that, then you're saying she's bribing me. But take a step back and say, yes, I've got concerns on that. I don't like it. I've got concerns on guaranteeing a job. I agree with you, right? But if you were in an audit, right, information is obtained from various people within the client. There's nothing wrong with getting information from PA, right? So you then have to question to say, if we're going to use it as a source of information, I have concerns on guaranteeing a job. We should make clear that we can't do that. But if she has information we can use, we must use it. But we must think about whether it's trustworthy information. There's nothing wrong with using information from a PA. And that's the problem, because if you conclude already before you even start writing, then you're going to end up in where you've concluded. You're going to miss the other aspects that are important.
I see. Now it actually does make sense. Thanks, Kumo. I appreciate it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Retabile?
Kumo, I hear you, but how I saw this thing is that since we're already dwelling on the credibility of the information, for instance, the employee costs, and you've already asserted that we've got access to all the information, I was on the boundaries like everyone else of a bit of ethics, because sometimes in audit they say what is not documented is what is your risk, because all the information that you have is not the risk, but the information that is not there is what could lead you to make certain decisions, because we're trying to buy a company here, and this information she's going to give us, for instance, the source, how it's obtained, is it obtained illegally, poppy, and that's why it kind of lures you to actually dwell on ethics, because now you're thinking, if I get this information, would I be in breach of certain confidentiality?
But remember, that's the aspect I said. You have to caution Ryan and say, we need to get the employer's information, right? Her employer's information, permission, not information, permission, because you can't just be speaking to the PA and say, give me everything. Because if you don't get the permission from management to speak to this person and say they can give you information, then you might find yourself in trouble. So you have to question that. And I did mention that it's just not in the words that you want. You just want to see the word ethics, but it doesn't have to be the word ethics, right? Well, do we have permission? That's an ethical consideration.
And I think for most of us, especially coming from CTA and ITC, you want to be expressive about this point and not just be less detailed. So we wanted to put in detail, and I think that's where we want to know, like, when should we just be brief, and when should we actually
so in this particular case, that's where you're going to get it wrong, right? Because you're going to write 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs about the PA where it's not even part of the task, right? Because the issue is the procedures. But here the question then comes, if you use her information as source of audit evidence, what are your considerations regarding this? Number one, is it trustworthy information? Number two, do we have permission to get information from the PA, from management, right? Very, very, very important. And those are the ethical considerations, actually, if you think about it. And then also, we can't guarantee a job. We can't.
So on a guideline basis, if you were to advise us, Would you say half a page is the maximum we should be typing?
This is not key to the task, right? It's important information that he gave you as a note, which means you need to respond to him if you have any concerns regarding that note. So if you tell him straight up that, hey, hold up, Ryan, number one, you know, whilst she could serve as a valuable source of information in our due diligence investigation or verification, I'm concerned about us agreeing to guarantee a job. We don't have this capacity. We shouldn't be doing this. Number two, the value of the information that she gives us depends on her integrity, trustworthiness, knowledge, and understanding of the matters, right? And then number three, we actually need to have permission from management to get information from the PA. And you don't have to write a lot about this because this is not the focus of the task. You're just flagging those concerns you have regarding the note that he gave you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm covered.
Awesome. Progress. I really need to close it down now because you guys are supposed to be starting the other task. Progress. Progress. I can't
Hello.
hear you.
I don't know if you hear me, but it's an old hand. It's an old hand. I can't lower it because of my network.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Richabile, is that an old hand or a new hand?
So it's an old hand.
Okay, good.
Hi, Kumo. I have a quick question.
Hi, Linda.
Hello. No, you speak.
I can hear you, Linda. Is it Linda or is Precious? Sorry.
Precious.
Okay.
So what I wanted to understand is the procedures, were they limited to these 3 line items that they gave us? Because the other thing that I thought when I read this is that perhaps I had to go back to the financials that were given, and I actually went back to the financials and noted that some of the items like were not talked about. So my question is, were we supposed to stick to these 3 line items, taking into account that he said his knowledge is rusty on this topic?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. You just want to repeat that a little bit.
So what I'm saying is, in the information of the day, they've given us 3 line items: revenue, employee cost, and other operating cost, right? But in the income statement, like from the financials that were given on pre-release, right, we had other line items. So was it necessary to also look at other line items, or we had to just stick to the 3 line items that were given?
Right. So we've got the biggest line items that were given there, right? But take a look at what he said on the day. He said, I have started drafting the due diligence procedures to be performed on selected components, to be performed on selected components of the statement of profit or loss, right? And then those were the selected components that he gave you, okay? If you want to mention that, well, there are other line items we need to think about, and this is why, yeah, but it's nothing to write home about, because even if you look at the financials, he selected the things that have got the biggest number. Look at that. The tuition fees, the employee costs, the other expenses, right? Then you've got your depreciation and stuff, right? But really that's a non-cash item. Then you've got your interest income, finance charges. Yeah, you can mention things, but it's nothing to write home about because he gave you the things he's worried about, and those are the biggest things.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right, guys. I think this is it. I think you guys should. Linda, your hand. Linda? Can you hear me? Yeah, but you're very far. No, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No, I wanted to ask with regards to that ethical question. Since you indicated that there are two things, whether we have permission or whether that information sort of like it's valid, sort of. Then assuming that we know that the information that we're gonna get is credible, but we don't have permission, can we go ahead?
Yeah, but that will be a bad decision, because what would happen, let's say this merger doesn't, this acquisition doesn't go through, this transaction doesn't go through. You've got confidential information out in your hands that you never had permission to get.
Okay.
Okay, very, very important. Okay. Awesome, guys. I hope this was helpful. I hope it added value, and that you learned something from this. And if we just go to my last slide, are there any new learnings, guys? I won't look at everything else because we covered it. Any new learnings from this?
I think for me, it is just important to be present in the task, read properly, and decide. Like, spend time on how to formulate the answer. Don't just start rushing. Because I feel like once I got to this task, I kind of was like in a rush for time and all, like just to be present in what is being required.
Indeed, you have to be present on the information on the day. Break it down. Focus on the things they're asking you. Don't focus on the things you want to write home about. It's very important. All right, guys. There are no further contributions, no further points. I think I'll just let you guys take a break. I think I'll tell the team doing the next task to be back at 8. Is that fine? At 8. Matloha, your hand is up. Okay. All right, guys. 8 is fine, eh? Okay, cool. All right, guys. All the best with the next task. I'll speak to you guys, I think, for task H.
Hi, Kumo, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I was just saying, because I've just joined the class asset today, how do I get hold of the recorded videos for the sessions that took place the past few weeks? Thank you.
Right. I think you can reach out to Tembe. He can ask you admin. He can assist you with that. All those administrative questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. All right. Cheers, guys. We'll see you guys again at 8.
Bye, Kuma.
Thank you so much. Bye.